Alright, I am back with another video, and today we are doing, I guess it's a build request, but from a very, very long time ago. I've recently been going through, back through my old documents in which I took a bunch of build request ideas, and kind of, just wanted to see if there was any that would kind of be interesting to make, and I found a video concept, a build, called the Knight of the Immortal Flame. Now, the person who requested this a long, long time ago, I can't find their original comment, and I apologise for that. Basically, what they kind of asked for was somebody who was good at being able to use a sword as well as magic, so a spell sword, as well as being able to be adept with a shield, able to protect their allies as well, and basically just kind of be an all-around character. Attacking, defending, magic, a focus on fire and ice. They asked to be able to use both fire shield and Armour of Agathys in a single build, and I will have a way to do that, but it's kind of a side option that is kind of suboptimal, but I'll point it out anyway. And as such, I kind of decided to come up with like a sort of like arcane, I guess, soldier type deal. So I've kind of gone for like the flaming fist attire here to kind of get that kind of knight soldiery feel, as it would also help kind of get the things that we want to grab. So I would say this person, even though they're like, I wouldn't say they're really a part of the flaming fist, they're more of just like a knight, but with like a magic flair. And I think this character is actually really, really cool. The playstyle is really, really interesting. Basically using various spells, Shield, for example, which is great anyway, to kind of build up Abjuration Wizard's Arcane Ward to give you even more defense. Now, there will be some variance with this build. Again, there's a few options you can take depending on what you want to get out of this build. It's entirely up to you, so you can decide, and I'll get into those variances as we go. But the main core idea is Spellcaster mixed with Sword Fighter with a shield, some decent armor, and the ability to just be very, very defensive. So, and the other thing they wanted was the ability to teleport around, which we can very easily get. So, let's get into the build. We're going to be kicking things off as a fighter. This is going to give us everything that we want. Constitution saving throw proficiency for those concentration saves, martial weapon proficiency, all of the armors, shields, everything. And as well as a fighting style, and since we are going for sword and board here, we're going to be going with dueling to give us an additional 2 damage to weapons as long as we are not wielding another weapon in the offhand, or not wielding a two-handed weapon. So if we have a longsword, as I have here, and a shield, we will get along just fine, getting that little bit of extra damage. We also, as for the stats here, this is a pretty standard spread for an Eldritch Knight, which is what we're going to be going for. We have 16 strength here for our main hand attacks, but I guess technically with the weapon I've chosen, you can actually go dexterity if you want, but this will give you a bit more variance if you don't want to use a finesse weapon, but with the weapon I've gone for here, you could put these points into dexterity instead, if you would like. Dexterity is at 12. We are wearing medium armor and have plenty of ways to buff up our AC, such as our shield, the shield spell, and some other things. We'll get a pretty solid AC by the end of this, 20 by default, with the ability to make it higher, so you don't actually need your dexterity to be that higher, unless, of course, you're using a finesse weapon and you want to be able to make your AC higher, as well as being better at initiative, then you can bump up your dexterity. Constitution is at 14. We're not the most tanky person in the world. Our main tankiness comes from our AC rather than our actual HP, but we still round out to quite a nice number at the end. And finally, Intelligence at 16, as it is going to be our main spellcasting modifier, so I've dumped Wisdom and Charisma. As for our skill proficiencies, I've gone with the Soldier background because, of course, and I've taken Perception and Survival. At fighter level 2, we're going to be picking up Action Surge. You already know what this does. It gives us an extra action once per short rest. Next up, we get to choose our subclass, and of course we're going with Eldritch Knight. Eldritch Knight is going to give us a few things: spells, spell slots, and a bunch of unique and interesting features, like for example Weapon Bond, allowing us to throw our weapon and have it come back to us. We won't be using this so much with this current build, as we're not really using a weapon with the thrown property, but it is there if you need it. We get to pick up some cantrips, and I just recommend picking up some pretty standard options. I would say I have gone with a high half-elf here and chosen Firebolt as my starting cantrip. Since we're already going to be using intelligence, we might as well get even more cantrips. So I'm going to pick up Ray of Frost and Shocking Grasp to round out our kind of elemental lineup, because I kind of see this character as being able to use a lot of elemental and magic, not just fire and ice, but lightning, acid, poison, all of it, because we're going to get the opportunity to get lots of cantrips on this build, as well as lots of kind of lower level attacking spells, so you'll be able to have a wide array of different spells at your disposal, including Chromatic Orb, allowing you to attack with thunder, fire, ice, lightning, all sorts of different elements with a single spell. Very, very nice variants that felt right to grab. As well as Shield, our first Abjuration spell, and it's going to be important. You're going to want to make sure you pick up some Abjuration spells as you go. Mage Armour could be helpful if you decide you wanted to go a clothing route, and that's another Abjuration spell, so that could certainly work. But we are wearing armor with this build, so it might not work as well for us, but if you have someone in the party that could benefit from it, you could cast for them. And yeah, we can also try and pick up another Abjuration spell here. Let me just try and remember which ones. Well, but Protection from Evil and Good could work, but it's not good, so don't take it. Mage Armor, like we said. Most of these, I don't think a lot of these are Abjuration spells. In fact, only those two are. Abjuration spells are a bit limited. Your best bet, if you wanted to take a 1-level dip into Cleric, would be to get Sanctuary, which would be very, very powerful. But I don't do that with this build. So, but at least make sure you pick up Shield. You'll find that Shield will trigger enough to keep your Arcane Ward up anyway, so you'll be absolutely fine. So pick whatever you like for this one. We can just grab Magic Missile for a solid damage option. Next up, at Fighter level 4, we are going to be able to grab our first feat, and I'm going to use an ability score improvement to bump our strength up to 18. This is a pretty solid number to have overall, as we do kind of focus more on the spellcasting side than the sword side, even though we do get both, and you could bump this up to 20 with the Potion of Everlasting Vigor, but if you feel like this character wouldn't do that, then 18 is just fine. It will be perfect for the rest of the game. We'll mainly want to focus on our other stats from here on out. We do get another spell at this level, and again, you could take this if you just want a simple way to fuel your Abjuration. Just cast this and it will kind of stay up, and you can just kind of spam it out of combat, but I don't recommend that personally. Our spell slots are a bit more limited, so Thunderwave is quite a nice spell, but Witch Bolt can also work. Or Burning Hands even. Next up, at Fighter level 5, we are going to get our hands on extra attack, meaning we can now attack twice with our action, which is great. Next up, at Fighter level 6, we are going to get a bonus feat, which means we can take an ability score improvement and bump up our intelligence ahead of our Wizard multiclass. Now this is where one of the kind of variant options you have come up. You can go to level 7 of Eldritch Knight for War Magic, allowing you to, after you cast a cantrip, you can make a weapon attack as a bonus action. This is what I personally chose, as I found it gave the build a bit more versatility, especially when combined with some of the equipment we have. And it gives us access to level 2 spells as well from this list, which you can pick a couple of. You've got Darkness, Arcane Look, which is Abjuration, so, I mean, technically, but don't. Mouse Acid Arrow, Scorching Ray, Shatter, which I'm going to take. These two, because I think they're quite good for our overall arsenal, Scorching Ray especially. But yeah, you can kind of take whatever you like here. It really doesn't matter. But if you don't feel like you care about Warcaster so much, you can go into a Wizard now, getting 6 levels of Wizard. Or you could take a 1-level dip into Sorcerer. Draconic Sorcerer, getting the white Draconic Sorcery, in order to grab Armour of Agathys that way if you really, really want it, which would be another Abjuration spell that would give you like temporary HP and a bit of retaliation on attack. So that's kind of how you would do that. But I'm personally going for 7 levels of Eldritch Knight and 5 levels of Abjuration Wizard, because I found that to be the kind of combination that I felt worked the best. Speaking of, let's head over to Abjuration now. So we're going to go over to Wizard, picking up 3 more cantrips, and I'm going to be picking up the 3 remaining offensive cantrips that we didn't grab to kind of round out our elemental options, as well as picking up some utility spells from here: Enhanced Sleep, Longstrider, Featherfall, and any others that you like you can pick up here. I will kind of pick these two up just to kind of fill out the slots as well as giving us those extra abjuration options if we want them. And something like Ice Knife can also work out quite nicely. In fact, actually, let's do that instead. And yeah, you kind of can play around with these options as you see fit. Next up, at Wizard level 2, we get to pick our subclass, and of course we're going with Abjuration, giving us Arcane Ward, basically giving us a bit of extra defense for every Abjuration spell we cast, and that can kind of stack up over time, so it's basically just making us a bit more tanky, as well as being able to get us a couple of more spells. I say Ray of Sickness and Grease work quite nicely. Ooh, there's the Arcane Ward now. And next up at level 3, we do also get a level 2 spells, and since one of the build request kind of requirements was teleporting, we can grab Misty Step here to be able to do just that, as well as Mirror Image. I find this spell to be extremely useful, and there's obviously other things here like Arcane Lock is an abjuration spell. I think that's the only other abjuration spell we can get here, unfortunately. Yeah, they're in very limited supply, as you can see. Oh well. Next up, at level 4, we are going to be able to pick up another cantrip, and at this point it's a choose your favourites type of situation. And we also gain access to a couple of more level 2 spells. I'm going to take Melf's Acid Arrow, and I don't know actually what would be a fun kind of other spell to grab. I mean, you have a ton of options here, so it is a kind of a pick your favourite situation. Let's grab Flaming Sphere to get a summon. That sounds fun. And yeah, we can slap these on here too. And like I said, we do get another feat at this level, and another way of getting Armour of Agathys if you kind of want to keep this level scheme, but don't care about getting your stats maxed out. You could go for Magic Initiate Warlock to grab a couple of extra cantrips, which unfortunately will use your Charisma, but you can also grab Armour of Agathys this way, but you can only use it once per long rest. Thought I would point that out, but as it is there, but I'm going to be going for an ability score improvement to bump up our intelligence to 20. Right, and at our final level of Abjuration Wizard, we're going to be level 5, and we're going to get some level 3 spells, including one of the more important spells for this build. We can pick up Counterspell. Counterspell is an abjuration spell that allows us to stop another spell from being cast, so basically that we can fill up our Arcane Ward that way while being quite versatile and being able to protect our allies from spells. Another abjuration spell here is Glyph of Warding, which would give you various different types of elemental traps that you can cast, which would also increase your Arcane Ward. But the other options you have here as well are Haste, Fireball, Lightning Bolt would all be really good. In fact, I use Lightning Bolt in my combat footage, so I'm going to be grabbing that. But you have options here as well. And remember, you can always learn these spells from scrolls if you don't pick them up this way as well, so be able to be sure to look for scrolls throughout your playthrough. And also, like I said, if you want to, you can go to Abjuration Wizard level 6 instead of level 7 of Eldritch Knight to get the version of Arcane Ward that you can use to defend your allies as well. The kind of effect can spread to them, I think, as a reaction, but you lose like a charge of your Arcane Ward. As you can see, I have a couple of charges here. And that could kind of fit into the protecting your allies thing. There's a lot of different ways to make this build. I have the kind of different level spreads that you can pick in the description below, as I always do. I kind of have like a build roundup down there. But yeah, as what you're going to get with this build is a pretty fun build. You're going to get a pretty standard spellsword, getting both offensive magics of all walks of life. You're going to get defensive magics like shield and counterspell. You're going to be getting a bunch of defensive options, a bunch of melee and ranged options as well. All of it's going to fit together really nicely. You're going to feel pretty solid with this build overall, as you're just going to have so many options in combat. And even if you kind of run out of spell slots, I mean, we get up to level 4 here, which is quite nice, you're still going to have plenty of options with your equipment, your weapons mainly. So you're going to be getting a decent chunk out of this build. It's going to feel like kind of like an elementalist spell sword, which I think works quite nicely. But let's get into the equipment now. For starters, let's go with our weapon. I have chosen Fowler Aluv, infused with the Drekthroat Glaive's fire buff. Fowler Aluv just felt like a pretty decent sword to use with this. It's one of the more fun long swords in the game. We can make it a +2 with a bit of extra fire damage, fitting on theme with the build, thanks to the Drekthroat Glaive, and it comes with Fowler Aluv Melody. Specifically, I want to be using the Shriek version, making it so that all enemies within range have a 1d4 penalty to Charisma, Wisdom, and Intelligence saving throws, and take an extra 1 to 1d4 thunder damage whenever they take damage. So overall, we're just going to have a ton of extra damage on this build and a way to kind of like help our allies out that way, and giving them a harder chance to make saving throws against our spell effects as well, which is quite nice. Again, but you could also go with the Shriek variant to basically give Bless to your allies, which is quite nice, like a minor version of it anyway. And I just felt like it worked out quite nicely with this build, kind of looks-wise as well. The next important thing is the shield. We get the Shield of Scorching Reprisal, which comes with the standard shield bash and a +2 to our AC, but it comes with a unique ability to use once per short rest called Blazing Retaliation, allowing us to increase our armor class by 1 as a bonus action, and then whenever someone misses us with a melee attack, they take 1 to 6 fire damage. So I believe this lasts for 1 turn, and you can use it once per short rest, but it's basically just like a way to do a little bit of extra damage. It kind of felt on theme for the build, because this build kind of has a retaliation theme between Fire Shield and Armour of Agathys, if you decide to go with it. Like I said, all the options to do that will be in the description below. And it just felt like on theme for the build. It kind of merges nice with the rest of the equipment here, so I quite liked it overall. The camera's kind of flown away from us. There we go. But yeah, let's get into the other equipment. We have the Darkfire Shortbow here. I just wanted to slap this on this build because it's going to give us resistance to fire and cold damage, which just made sense, and haste once per long rest, which can really help out this build, basically kind of getting extra attack with your spells, if you like, making you feel like you have a bit more versatility. And yes, I use this on every build, but that's just because it's so damn good. And next up for the kind of main equipment here, we've got the Grimskull Helm. This also gives us resistance to fire damage, so if you want to put the Darkfire Shortbow on someone else, you can still at least get fire resistance, which we get from the armor as well, I think, but you know, so we're kind of stacking that up, but this is still a really good headpiece. Obtained in Act 1, it means critical hits cannot land against us, which is really great for being a bit more tanky, and it allows us to use Hunter's Mark as well, once per long rest, basically just giving us a bit of extra weapon damage whenever we hit our target. Next up is the Cloak of Protection, giving us a +1 to our armor class and saving throws, rounding out our AC to a nice 20 when all is said and done. Next up is the Flame Enameled Armor, giving us a +2 bonus to our initiative rolls, helping to make up for that low dexterity. We have resistance to fire damage and a +2 to saving throws, again making us even tankier against spells as well. We have disadvantage on stealth checks, not that we really focused on that, and it gives us a usage of Fire Shield Warm once per long rest. So now we have a way to kind of get that kind of fiery aura. Scorching Frames shed light in a 3-meter radius, you take only half the damage of all cold damage, and deal 2 to 16 fire damage to anyone who hits you with a melee attack. Again, we have a lot of retaliation damage with this build. Anyone coming close is really going to feel the burn. Next up is the Helldust Gloves, a pretty standard option for any sort of fire-themed build, giving all of your weapon attacks an additional 1d6 fire damage, as well as unarmed strikes getting necrotic damage and bleeding, but we don't have that here. It's also going to give us a +1 bonus to our spell save attack rolls and spell save DC, which I think is really great for us. It's going to mean that we can hit with both our weapons and our spells much more effectively, and it gives us the ability Rays of Fire, allowing us to basically cast a different version of Scorching Ray, which is a bit more powerful once per short rest, which is great. Next up is the... Oh, but in the meantime, these are in Act 3 options, so if you wanted to use something else instead, you can use the Helm Gloom Gloves, which basically is the same thing with a little bit less gas, only dealing a 1d4 of fire damage, but you can pick these up a lot earlier. And I haven't included it in the inventory here, but an earlier game option for the armor, which I'll have linked down in the description, is the 1t Scale Mail, which I think will be a pretty solid option for you just to kind of pick up. There are some other options too, if you so choose. Heavy armor would even be a good idea as well. You could totally go for heavy armor. And finally, the Boots of Elemental Momentum. Whenever the wearer deals acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage with a spell or cantrip, they gain momentum for 2 turns, so it just allows us to be a bit more mobile. I could also recommend the Boots of Striding as well, if you wanted to prevent yourself from being knocked prone while concentrating. That can also be really good, but I quite like these ones, just giving us the extra movement speed, and it's kind of on theme with the Elementalist stuff, and I never really recommend these boots, but definitely the Boots of Striding could also work as well. As for our accessories, I've gone with the Elemental Gish Standard. The Necklace of Elemental Augmentation is going to boost our cantrips equal to our spellcasting modifier, basically getting Agonizing Blast on elemental cantrips, which is perfect for this build. And since we're using War Magic, we can cast one of these boosted cantrips and then make a weapon attack as a bonus action, which will be augmented by our rings. The Ring of Arcane Synergy allows us to, whenever we deal damage with a cantrip, gain Arcane Synergy, meaning that our weapon attacks will deal extra damage equal to our spellcasting modifier, meaning that we cast a cantrip on as a main action, then attack with our bonus action with this boosted damage, including the Ring of Elemental Infusion's extra d4 of elemental damage. So say, with all of these combined, we cast Firebolt. That means our Firebolt will have a bonus equal to our intelligence modifier. Then our weapon attacks will gain an extra d4 of fire damage from this ring and extra damage from the Arcane Synergy equal to our spellcasting modifier, meaning that our next weapon attack is going to deal pretty big damage, stacked on with the Drakefruit Glaive and the Helldusk Gloves buff. That's a lot of damage, and you can mix that up with other elements too to bypass resistances, which is great. I mean, my Elemental Gish kind of concept was one of the earliest things I ever shared on this channel, and it's crazy to see that this combination is still quite fun to use after this many patches and this many updates this late into the game's life cycle. So yeah, that is the build. Overall, I'm quite happy with this one. There's a lot of different ways you can kind of experiment and build with it to your preference, taking levels out of things, adding in levels here and there, and kind of changing up what you want to do. There's a big theme of kind of like retaliation here with Fire Shield, Scorching Reprisal. You kind of get a bit of like battlefield control with Valor Eluve, but you're mainly, and again, you kind of get to defend your allies as well with Arcane Ward, Counterspell, but also teleport around with Misty Step, and just get all these different cool elemental attacks like Lightning Bolt, Scorching Ray, Magic Missile, Chromatic Orb, and the defensive options like Mirror Image, extra options like Flaming Sphere. You can play around with this build in so many different ways and have a ton of fun. And again, you get that full kind of fighter feel too with things like Action Surge, the extra attack, and all that. Haste being on this build is really, really fun, and it's good to have those like common damage resistances as well. I actually quite like this one. This one just kind of got stuck in my build request backlog for the longest time, and I had it built and ready to go and just never did a video on it for some reason. So I've just decided to do it today, and I'm honestly quite proud of it. Anyways, on to end of video stuff. My last video, the, the Fortunate 4, did amazingly well. The best a video on this channel has done in a long time. People absolutely loved the concept, and I'm looking to do more builds kind of based on like kind of historical archetypes like that. So maybe like Vikings, or some people suggested like various different like European like kind of soldier combat styles and stuff like that. Like there's a ton of different things I kind of want to experiment with and I'm looking into. So if you have any ideas, please let me know. But I absolutely loved making that build, and I'm so glad, all those builds, and I'm so glad it was well received by everyone. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you. As for other channel stuff, I mean, not much else going on. I'm still working on that really, really big video, and I'm hoping to get that done soon. I have a very free weekend this weekend, actually, I think. So I kind of got an idea. I think I might want to do an Elden Ring live stream kind of on the usual time, but there's an extra live stream I want to do, and I'm going to discuss this with the Discord eventually, so if guys from the Discord stick around or join the Discord to join the discussion. I've been working on a kind of personal project for a long time now. It's in its infancy, but I'd like to get people's opinions on it and maybe some input on how it's going to be built. It's revolving around build making, not for a currently existing game though. You'll see what I mean when we get to it. So hopefully, if I decide to do that, you guys will show up for that. Let me know if there's any kind of interest there. Like I say, I'm planning to discuss it with the Discord after this build video goes live. And yeah, I don't think there's much else for me to say. My voice may sound a bit weird in this video. It's very, very late at night and I'm a bit tired because I've had a very strange day as far as making videos goes. I had a video completely uploaded and ready to go, and I sat there watching the video back as it was uploading and I went, wow, this is just not a good build. Well, I mean, it's a good build, it's perfectly solid, but it's just so bland and boring that I was like, I'm not actually happy with it. The video is still being uploaded actually as I'm recording this video now, because and I just wasn't happy with it, so I decided to set that one. I'm not gonna like just get rid of it. It's gonna go up on Sunday as like a bonus upload, but it's literally just gonna be like, hey, this is kind of a scrapped video, but I decided to just kind of upload anyway, so you guys are gonna get a bonus video this weekend regardless. And I was like, then I found this video kind of in my backlog, and I thought, you know what, if I can kind of record this and kind of just chill, take it slow, put on my nighttime voice, and just kind of, you know, narrate over this in a kind of calmer way, I think I can turn this into something interesting. And I actually really, really do like this build. Don't get me wrong, this build has a couple of flaws. Like I say, the lack of abjuration outside of shield and counterspell is a bit tricky to work with. Again, you can get Glyph of Warding, which can help. As well as if you play around with the build's levels and feats, you can get Armour of Agathys, which would be a pretty freaking solid way to get abjuration spells. So, for your Arcane Ward, but you might decide that the Arcane Ward isn't for you, and you could go with Evocation instead, which actually would be really good, or Divination. This is kind of just showing off kind of like a thing of like, hey, 7 levels of Eldritch Knight and 5 levels of Wizard. It actually works really nicely, and you have various different ways you can kind of make it work. So this is maybe less of a build that I'd say play this exactly, but maybe just kind of experiment with the idea of the concept, and tell me what else you come up with, because I think this kind of idea, this kind of sword and shield, like intelligence-based caster can really, really work out, and I think it worked out quite nicely this time, but I think it can be improved upon with slightly less restrictions, because I had some restrictions with this, because this is an old build request. I like to work with restrictions, but I feel like if you wanted to truly optimize this build, you could, but this build is plenty fine on its own. Anyways, I think that was enough time to let the combat footage play out, so I am going to leave it here. Thank you all so much for watching, and goodbye.